You guys ready? Yeah. You ready? Ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday, October 2nd, West Fargo City Commission meeting. Before we get started, I'd ask that our guests be sure and all silence your cell phones. With that, please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, excuse me. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chief Dennis Otterness for the purpose of the swearing in of officers and his color guard.
If you'd all please stand for the posting of the colors. Color guard, post colors.
Ready, hold. Post colors. Uniform personnel, present arms.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms.
All right, you may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time.
In case you're wondering, they didn't call me in for IT support. They've got our IT department here for that. I know, I don't want you to be confused.
Advanced issues, I'd call you,
I know.
for sure. So you're trying to log in? So you're trying to log in?
I think I need probably for.
Well, it's logged into someone's, yeah. Okay,
You should be logged in.
you can try it.
I don't need to log in.
Oh,
She'll do the agenda up here.
okay.
Thanks, Hyder. Good evening, Commission President Dardis and members of the Commission. Tonight's a little bit bittersweet for me as this is my last formal role as the police chief in West Fargo. But I'm here on a happy note because we get to be here for a promotional ceremony of Officer Travis Johnson to Sergeant Travis Johnson and the swearing in of 4 of our newest officers. So this is always a great occasion, not only for the police department, but for the community. And certainly you see it's standing room only tonight, so we've got a lot of families and friends in attendance. And so this is a huge step, not only for a promotional ceremony for Travis after many years of service to the city of West Fargo, but also the beginning of what we hope is a very amazing career for these officers that have just taken on a role here with the city of West Fargo. So with that, I would like to start tonight with Travis Johnson. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Travis, and then I'll ask him to introduce himself a little bit to you as well before we get to the official pinning. But Travis is from Fargo, North Dakota, where he graduated from Fargo North High School in 2001. After high school, he graduated from the University of North Dakota in 2004 with a Bachelor of Science degree majoring in criminal justice and German. He completed UND Lake Region's Peace Officer Program, Class 73, in the summer of 2004. He was a police officer from the Medora Police Department from May of 2005 until September of 2005 when he was hired by the McLean County Sheriff's Office as a deputy. The West Fargo Police Department hired Travis in 2007 as a patrol officer, and he was promoted to patrol sergeant in July of 2023. In addition to his current duties as a sergeant in our patrol division, he has been a bike patrol officer since 2010, the head mentor and leader for our youth cadet program since 2009, an instructor for Project Lifesaver since 2022, and a member on our Less Lethal team since January of 2023. He has also overseen Coffee with a Cop. He's been a taser instructor and on the drone team. He's taken part in the rotational detective position, been a department photographer, and a criminal intelligence analyst investigator. He was awarded the Life Saving Award in 2008, the Commendable Service Award in 2016 and 2022, and the Flag Family Luther Ford Salute to Law Enforcement 2020 Distinguished Service Award in 2020. Those were for his actions during a fire, and a Commendable Service Award in 2022 for leading the safety cadets during multiple high-stress events and the loss of a fellow cadet. When not working, Sergeant Johnson enjoys hunting, fishing, biking, traveling, photography, shooting, and military history. He's married and has 2 kids. And with that, I'd like to ask Sergeant Johnson to come on up. You want to introduce yourself to the commission?
Well, I'm Travis Johnson, as you guys heard. Kind of the bio speaks a lot of what there is about me, but I did grow up in the Fargo area. I was lucky enough to intern here under Chief Rasmussen in 2002, and he was gracious enough to hire me back in 2007 when I was old enough and had some experience under my belt. So happy to be back here and be part of the team.
Thank you, Travis.
Do you have somebody to pin you tonight?
Yeah, my wife.
All right.
I'm not sure what she's hiding.
Congratulations. You bet. All right, next we'll move on to our newly hired officers, and we'll start with Officer Troy Casperson. If you want to join me up here, Troy. Troy was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, and grew up in Plymouth, Minnesota, where he graduated from Armstrong High School in 2018. He's a graduate from the Lake Region State College Peace Officer Academy in West Fargo in 2022, and graduated from Minnesota State University Moorhead in December of 2022. Prior to being hired by the West Fargo Police Department as a patrol officer in November of 22, he worked as a juvenile detention worker for West Central Juvenile Center. When not working, he enjoys fishing, reading, and lifting weights, and he is currently not married and has no kids. And with that, I'll let Troy introduce himself a little bit further to you, Commissioner.
Like the chief said, Troy Gasperson. Born and raised down in Twin Cities. Went up here for college where I learned to enjoy the area. Going through Lake Region State College here in West Fargo, the first class to go do so. met a lot of the West Fargo officers, saw how happy they were, how content they were. They had only great things to say about the department and the city. So that's ultimately what made my decision to apply and get hired here at West Fargo.
Great. Congratulations and welcome.
Have somebody that's going to pin you tonight? All right. Congratulations. Next is Officer Sari Squara, and Sari may look familiar to you because she's been with us here at the city in a different capacity for a number of years. So she was born and raised in West Fargo, graduating from West Fargo High School in 2006. During high school, she was a member of West Fargo Police Department's Explorers Post or Youth Academy for 3 years, as well as interned for a semester at the department. She attended the University of North Dakota for a year prior to transferring to Minnesota State University Moorhead, where she graduated in 2009 with her bachelor's degree in criminal justice. She graduated from the Lake Region State College Peace Officer Academy in 2008 and went on to be a patrol officer for the city of Bismarck. She was hired by West Fargo Police Department in September of 2012 as a police clerk. In July of 14, she was chosen to be the department's first quartermaster, and in July of 17, she took on additional position of the evidence technician. In January of 19, the quartermaster position was removed from her duties, making her the full-time evidence technician. And in March of 2023, she became a sworn police officer for the West Fargo Police Department. In addition to her patrol duties, she has been on the planning committee for Night to Unite since 2013, a cadet mentor since 2014, the department's historian since 2015, a member of the Employee Engagement Committee and the Police Association, Secretary-Treasurer since 2018, and a member of the Department Awards Committee since 2019. Prior to being sworn in, she was also a car seat installation technician from 2013 to 2019, high school intern coordinator from 2015 to 2018, fulfilled the role of a backup transcriptionist, was on the uniform committee, coordinator for Night to Unite, CART team member, and Battle of the Badges blood drive coordinator. She was awarded Employee of the Quarter for the first quarter of 2018 and the fourth quarter of 2021. When not working, she enjoys traveling, watching football and hockey, reading, making greeting cards, and most of the time spending time with her family and friends. She's married, has a daughter and son at home, and twin boys in heaven. So do you have somebody here? Oh, actually, I probably should introduce yourself a little bit better to the commission.
So I'm Sari. Like the chief said, I was born and raised in West Fargo. All I ever wanted to do was be a police officer for West Fargo. And I was very driven to it. It took me a lot longer than I anticipated, but thanks to Chief's belief in me and our command staff's belief in me, here I am. So thank you.
Congratulations and welcome.
Have somebody pinning?
Got it?
Should have practiced at home.
Right?
Good job. Good job, guys. Mr. Bryce Massey. Officer Massett was born and raised in West Fargo, North Dakota, where he graduated from West Fargo High School in 2015. He went on to attend Lake Region State College in Devils Lake for criminal justice, graduating from the Peace Officer Academy in 2016. He was a deputy for Towner County from May 17 until March of 18 when he was hired by the Devils Lake Police Department. From there, he was a patrol officer until 2021, at which time he was hired by the Dunseith Police Department, and worked there until he was hired by the West Fargo Police Department in March of 2023. When not working, he likes to lift weights, watch movies, and golf, and he has a girlfriend who has a 6-year-old child. Bryce, if you want to say a few words to the commission.
Yep, Bryce, grew up in West Fargo, went to West Fargo High School. Always wanted to work at home. The opportunity presented itself, and I was fortunate enough to get hired here, so
Congratulations and welcome.
thank you.
Somebody that's going to pin you. And Officer Lee Muse. Officer Muse is from Colgate, North Dakota, where he graduated from Hope Page High School. He went on to attend Bismarck State College, Paramedic Technology, and North Dakota State Peace Officer Academy. Officer Muse was a police officer and paramedic with the Rolla Police Department and a deputy with the Steele County Sheriff's Office, each for a year. He spent 14 years as a deputy with the Grand Forks County Sheriff's Office, and he's also a U.S. Army veteran. He served as a combat medic with one tour in Afghanistan prior to being hired by the West Fargo Police Department in June of 2023. When not working, Officer Muse enjoys hunting, fishing, camping, and archery.
As the chief said, my name's Lee. I grew up in Colgate, North Dakota. I basically been all over the world and back again. I wanted to get back into law enforcement after taking a year off because I'm not the kind of person that can sit on the sidelines. And I'm also someone that seeks growth and not comfort. And this was the place to do it. I mean, you guys, there's opportunities galore for people here. And that's why I'm very, very happy to be here after many years.
Congratulations and welcome.
Sir.
Somebody pin you tonight?
Yeah, my fiance. 10 days, actually.
Well, we're very proud of these five, and as you can see, we've got a great variety of experience from people that came from, obviously, from other agencies, and you've heard me stand before you on a number of occasions and tell you that we're very fortunate in West Fargo to attract police officers from other agencies that want to come and work here. And I think that's a testament to the City Commission and our community and the support that everybody here gives to our police department day in and day out, not only you, but our community. And so that's why we're able to attract the best of the best. And so we're very proud of them. As you heard, we've got a graduate of our Lake Region State College Police Officer Academy from last year. We've got 2 West Fargo graduates and 2 lateral police officers. So one from Dunseith Police Department and one from Grand Forks County. So with that, I will ask the 4 to come forward, and we will officially get you sworn in. Come up. Come on, Travis, we'll do all 5. I know, I apologize. We better make this official.
Go down.
All right, if you'll raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I state your full name.
I, Lee Edward Muse,
Having been duly appointed a police officer for the city of West Fargo,
having been duly appointed a police officer for the city of West Fargo,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform the said duties
perform the said duties
according to law.
according to law.
I will constantly strive
I will constantly strive
to achieve these objectives,
to achieve these objectives,
dedicating myself
dedicating myself
to my chosen profession, law enforcement.
to my chosen profession, law enforcement.
Congratulations. Guys gonna do a picture, right? You wanna do a picture with everybody? The commission's gonna want a picture with you, so we'll have to kind of squeeze in.
As Chief mentioned, this is one of his last formal things that he's going to do with the city of West Fargo as our chief of police. Hopefully we'll bring you back here and your friendships so that you have within the community and certainly within the commission. We can get you back here and maybe play a round of golf or share a cigar.
That sounds good.
And so we're very proud of you, and we want to thank you for your years of service dating back into the 90s when you first were here, and then when you came back as our chief for 3 years. To the new officers, welcome. Thank you for your service to our community. We're very proud of our police department, our command staff, and the rank and file officers that we have are second to none in our community. And that's a direct because of the way the communities does support the police department, and we're very, very proud of that. I want to call attention to some gray uniforms in the back of the room, the cadets. They play a critical role in a lot of the events we have in this community, and to see you in uniform tonight and there, and of course, Travis has been a big part of that and bringing those young people on as cadets in the West Fargo Police Department. So we're glad that you're here this evening, and hopefully someday we're going to be swearing in some, if not all of you, as West Fargo police officers. So thank you for your service to the community as well. But So this week is bittersweet, as you said, Chief, but at the same time, the command staff that we have in place and the leadership that we have, our training staff that is training these people, you can rest assured, you've left us in very, very good hands, and for that, we're eternally grateful.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for everybody that's here for the swearing-in ceremony, we will exit and we'll go down to the training room that's all the way down at the end of the hallway and leave the commission to do the business of the people, I guess.
Yes. Thank you, Chief. Yes. To all the family and friends that are here, thank you for being here. We're going to excuse you if you want to. You can certainly stay here if you'd like, but we're going to let you off the hook. Yeah, that's what I expected.
I know. Yeah. And I tell her every chance I get, but I appreciate that. So, the people on this, for sure, you know. Wow, that's great. I really appreciate that. So.
Ever since she's been 2, she's wanted to be a cop.
Yeah. Well, she's making that dream come true, but she works hard to make it happen, and that speaks volumes about her character. So. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna come and talk to you.
Chief, there's a couple of gift bags under that chair. I'm sure it's for the oh, they got it.
Make sure the door is closed.
Meeting is back in order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner George.
Here.
Commissioner Simmons. Here. Commissioner President Dordas.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here. Let the record show all 5 commissioners are in attendance. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. We have some changes that commissioners had requested, and they have been approved. So items B and C in the consent agenda will move down into the regular agenda, and they will be items 9A and 9B. I'd still like a motion on this, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
As amended. As amended. Thank you.
Second.
Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 18th, 2023. They have been distributed and they are in the packet.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 18th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F is the building permits. The report has been distributed and is in your packet. This is for information only. Are there any questions, commissioners, that you might have on the building permit report?
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Olson, Commissioner Olson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson second. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permit report. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We move on to the consent agenda. Again, we had items A through F. B and C have been moved to the regular agenda. So we have items A, D, E, and F. They are in your packet and they have been distributed.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended with only items A, D, E, and F. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on into the regular agenda. We are now on item number 3, public comment. At this point in time, we have had no one register for public comment. Is that correct, Madam Secretary? Okay. Moving on to item 4 is the appointment of Dustin Scott as the West Fargo City Administrator.
I'd make a motion to approve if there's no questions.
Commissioner Sivens moves to appoint Dustin Scott as the City Administrator for the City of West Fargo. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded for the appointment of Dustin Scott as the West Fargo City Commissioner. Is there any discussion?
Administrator. Administrator, not commissioner.
What did I say? Commissioner?
Commissioner.
No, throw them up here. too.
God, keep me in line. Administrator, pardon
Field
me.
promotion or what?
I'm having fun doing this. We have
Thanks
a
for
motion and
clarifying
a
that. That'd
second
have been-
as administrator.
Way too much pressure for me, way too much responsibility.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let the record show it was unanimous by the West Fargo City Commission.
Can we clap for him?
Moving on, regular agenda. Item number 5 is the 2024 final budget approval. We call on Dustin Scott, City Administrator for the City of West Fargo.
Yeah, change that.
Yeah. The agenda says Assistant.
Well, thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. And the agenda is correct because technically up until 5 seconds ago, I was still the Assistant Administrator. So, and to that, I'm deeply honored and I thank you very much. I look forward to serving. So for the 2024 final budget approval, you have all of the materials that have been provided. The biggest changes, of course, as you've seen, reduction of $86,000 that will help reduce our general budget items and the overall use of our general fund reserves. So thank you for those departments that were willing to give up just a little bit more as we now move to request approval of the final budget. And then one additional minor change that we've made today, thank you to one of our residents for providing this comment, but we did on page 24 of our budget book, did make a clarification or a change to a statement where in regards to the $200,000 worth of rent money that the city does receive. So that has been updated in our book online as well and should be in the copy that you have in your hands. So with that, I would stand for any questions, and our finance director is in the audience as well.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Scott? I have one comment. After our last special meeting that we had, the public came in and had a number of comments. There, I believe, were 8 individuals from our community that had signed up. And I took pretty close notes on some of their comments. And the next morning, I presented those notes to Mr. Scott about the citizens concerned on some of the line items and the like. And so I'd like to thank publicly Mr. Scott and our finance director, Heidi, is over there, and our consulting company, Nexus, Ryan, They took those comments to heart, and they went back to work, and they found a little more. So that's greatly appreciated. I hope that the public notices those changes that were made. You've done a nice job of clarifying them in your memo. So with that, I'm grateful. Thank you. This is a actionable item.
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the 2024 final budget as presented this evening on October 2nd, 2023. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Let the record show it was unanimous for the West Fargo City Commission on the approval of the 2024 final budget approval. Item number 6. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Item number 6 is Quality and Associates by EXP Realty Enterprise Grant. Casey Sanders Berglund, Economic Development Director for the City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, President Commissioners. Tonight I have an enterprise grant for this office space. It's located in the downtown mixed use area. As you can see in the packet, it does face Main Avenue. Essentially, kind of the summary is that the owner of the space is planning on expanding his team. He's currently in the process of and is expanding his team. He's wanting to remain in his current space. If you've watched kind of the real estate industry, this industry has kind of changed their approach as to how they operate. And this, as this space gets fit up, they could modernize as well. So, looking into this process, there was a lot of options in West Fargo. He could have moved, but essentially, being a longtime resident in West Fargo, he wanted to stay here and really prided himself in continuing to have a business in the core area of our city near our downtown core. So the space is 219 Main Avenue West, and really the two kind of points of this grant that we kind of reviewed is that we're looking to modernize the interior and some facade updates on the outside. So being more consistent with some best practices and standards in the real estate industry by also taking this existing building and doing some remodeling, focusing on the interior and having just separate meeting spaces that are not assigned to individuals but for the entire team, enhanced storage spaces, team training area. These will all be tools that he can now provide to a growing team that will help set up the business for more growth. The agents often use outside spaces like Thunder Coffee being a favorite to meet with their clients. And essentially, they would bring people for more of a targeted one-on-one meeting for more finalization, which I feel this space is set up well for, as it's not one most people use this access on the frontage road to just stop by and grab, like, say, a cup of coffee or something like a retail place would. So this use makes sense. And the second goal here is, and there was a quote in the packet regarding the exterior updates, but essentially complete pressure washing, cleaning up, and priming and painting the exterior of the entire building. So throughout the entire quotes, this owner is here should you have any specific questions, but he's continuing to get additional quotes from individuals. But one of the main quotes in here did not include things like fire suppression, signage should he choose to do that, electrical work, or any additional like wall coverings as the project moves forward. So in total, there's a range of $122,800 well over $150,000, knowing that these quotes are, some of them are a little bit dated, and most of the quotes will most likely have increased since he even received them. So essentially, the EDAC committee met on September 7th and recommended this project for approval, most notably stating that they feel the work will increase the lifespan of the building, and it's well positioned with adequate parking, and not something we hear often in the downtown area, and already usable infrastructure. They also mentioned it would be hopeful that other businesses along Main Avenue would see this business making upgrades and also be inspired to do the same. So with that, myself or Jeremy Qualley, the business owner, is here to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the enterprise grant for Qualley and Associates as presented this evening by Casey Sanders Berglund, our Economic Development Director. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Qualley, congratulations. This is the second generation that's been at this site, and the Qualley and Associates in Realty, and we're glad that we can keep you here in West Fargo.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Item number 7 is the second reading and final approval of A23-23 zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV of the city ordinances pertaining to wall graphic signs. Mr. Aaron Nelson, our planning director for the city of West Fargo, is presenting. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening and thank you. So item 7 is a request for second reading and final approval of ordinance amendment to Title IV relating to wall graphics signage. The first reading and the public hearing was held 2 weeks ago, where this item was presented in full. No changes have been made to the proposed ordinance, which is included in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. In summary, this requested ordinance would allow wall graphic signage only as a conditional use permit.
In reading through it today, Mr. Nelson, there was one sentence that, here it is, it's under discussions and observations. The applicant has requested a zoning ordinance amendment with language to allow for wall graphics, painted signs as permitted signage. You and I had a conversation about graphics. Sometimes there is a vinyl graphic that can be applied to rough surfaces. This says specifically painted signage. Is that nomenclature, is it given that the vinyl signage might be included in that as painted signage?
Yes, that is the intention, is it would be painted signage or anything that's paint-like. And so that was the reasoning for.
I just wanted to clarify that because,
Yep.
you know, if the vinyl graphics with that special 3M for rough surfaces starts going up, that somebody doesn't call you on it, okay?
Yep.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else, questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Moved and seconded to approve the second reading and final approval of A23-23 zoning ordinance amendment to the Title IV of the city ordinances pertaining to wall graphic signs. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 8 is a presentation of the sanitation study by Mr. Matt Anbick, the Director of Public Works for the City of West Fargo. It has been distributed, is in your packets, and I do believe that you've all had personal meetings and interviews with Mr. Anbick. And please continue.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. We were finally looking forward to getting this sanitation operation study in front of you. It seems like it's been a long time coming to get this to you. We had took a little longer to get some of that information that we were looking forward. But the end product in the end turned out really well. We're pleased with what we have. Tonight we have Mr. Bob Craigs from Burns McDonald that will be kind of going through and letting you guys know on the overview of the findings that we've had. Logan Jacobson, our sanitation manager, is also here for any questions after the presentation, and Steve Burian from Burian Associates is also here. So I'll turn it over to Bob.
Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. And as mentioned, I'm going to provide a summary of the study that you had an opportunity to look at. I'm going to make sure, with all the help of the IT folks, that I have this under control, maybe. Let's see here. I just want to minimize at the bottom. Sorry, Matt.
Should I grab it here? There, cool. This thing does not want to work today.
There we go. Okay. So as Matt said, we undertook the study with assistance from Burian Associates. Let me give you some background in terms of Burns and McDonnell. We work with a number of local governments across the country, specifically in North Dakota. We've worked with Grand Forks. We've worked with the county of Williston. We've been involved with work with Fargo. And so we have a good understanding of solid waste policy in the state of North Dakota. I've been involved in helping local governments for more than 30 years. So I did start when I was 2. I'm just trying to get you all to smile. You've all been so sober this evening, all for the right reasons. But I look forward to having some discussion as it relates to any questions that you have. So the study objectives included evaluating the current programs and system. Secondly, identify opportunities for improvements, set the program goals, and then recommend utility rates. So it's pretty logical in terms of the approach. The RFP that we responded to was very well laid out by Logan and Matt, and in terms of the overall objectives we've worked with them very closely in terms of gathering the information that was needed. So to give you a sense of the scope of the review of the city's program, since Logan and Matt and myself talk about this every day, there's all kinds of jargon, but just to give you a general sense, you have residential refuse, bulky and brush collection. Bulky is a term that you'll hear used. It really means items that you wouldn't put in your plastic bag, household trash. Bulky could be furniture, it could be bed frames, those types of things. And of course, brush collection, I think, is pretty obvious. The residential recycling collection program, currently you have a contract with a vendor to provide curbside collection. You also have a drop-off program, which is very successful. Commercial refuse collection, which just means essentially non-residents, that's for businesses, and commercial recycling. Household hazardous waste collection program. The city also owns a transfer station, which is basically very versatile. It has a number of uses. And then an inert landfill, and again, because there's a lot of jargon here, an inert landfill is basically for the disposal of items like construction and demolition materials, items that are non-hazardous that do not go in a regular landfill. So to give you a sense of the scope of the services that you offer, this is in the report itself. It's one of those flow charts that the engineers I work with really like flow charts, but if you simplify this, you can really see that it aligns with the scope of our review. We have residential collection, commercial collection, self-haulers. The inert landfill provides support to your departments in terms of street, sewer, and sanitation departments, which is critical in thinking about this. And of course, as you can see here, there's a reference to some of the facilities with the city of Fargo that you're partnering with for disposal, composting, et cetera. So this gives you a sense of the scope of the services that you provide your residents and businesses. So one of the aspects of the work that we do when we do these types of studies, and as a side note, I also sit on my own city council, so I'm familiar with some of the questions that you would like ask, as in, well, what are our neighbors doing? So this gives you a sense of some of those costs and some of the fees, as well as some of the services. And again, there's benchmarking tables that are in the study itself. What we wanted to do was just to share with you some of the residential benchmarking so you can see both the fees and the services. The challenge with this is that, especially in the solid waste area, the services aren't always the same from community to community, and the fees may not necessarily line up either. So we've tried to provide enough detail so you can get a sense as in terms of what your rates are, as well as some of the key services. So you can look here and see that we've got West Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Mandan, and Moorhead. Those were communities that we chose to benchmark. In part, that's based on the types of services they offer, as well as their size. So you can see currently the monthly rate for residential services, which is refuse recycling and seasonal brush, here in West Fargo is $17.50. You can see that the other communities that are similar in terms of services, such as Grand Forks, Bismarck, and Moorhead, have similar residential services. You can see what their rates are, and that from a benchmarking perspective, it's very similar. One of the recommendations in the report was to consider looking at other alternatives to collect out-of-cart set-outs. More jargon, right? Well, that just means materials that don't go in your cart. So there's some communities that approach this by suggesting that you cannot have any out-of-cart set-outs. There's some that will charge, as you can see here on the list. So if you have extra trash from Christmas time and you put it in a bag, you can set that next to the cart and you would be charged an extra fee. And then there's also, as you can see here, a couple of different programs. Specifically, I have it highlighted in yellow, both Grand Forks and Moorhead, whereby you can contact their solid waste and recycling departments and specifically ask for a special pickup, and they charge a minimum fee for that. So why am I sharing this with you now? Well, this will tie into the recommendations and some of the statements that we have in terms of moving forward. Again, it's through our experience, if you're going to reconfigure service, you have to make sure that there's some good alternatives, and that's the rationale behind this. So our review included looking at data, looking at information, having a number of conversations with Logan and Matt, as well as actually, of course, visiting the transfer station multiple times, going to the inert landfill, and actually doing some follow-on of some of the staff who are collecting refuse. So with all of that information, these are a summary of our recommendations that I want to highlight. First, we're suggesting you consider discontinuing out-of-cart set-outs. As I mentioned, however, we're suggesting a couple of things. Some communities will basically implement this and they'll offer an extra cart for a fee, or they'll just offer an extra cart. Why is that important? Well, you have collection vehicles that are side load collection, automated side loaders. So you have it simply put, an arm comes down, picks up the cart, and then dumps the trash. So if there's trash or bed frames or big boxes outside of basically the cart itself, then that requires some more labor. So we're suggesting considering discontinuing out-of-cart set-outs, offer extra carts, and as mentioned here, as I talked about in the benchmarking, consider implementing separate collection of bulky items. I'm fully aware through my conversations with your staff that this is a service that your residents love, and I understand that. And you'll see as we walk through this why we still think this will continue to be consistent with you being able to maintain that high level of service, but it'll also enable you to have a sustainable program. The third bullet is combine Wednesday and Friday residential routes. Why would you do that? This is something that Logan had been pondering with Matt's input before we even got started. It's about basically consolidating the routes and enhancing efficiency, so as West Fargo continues to grow, you can be in the position to basically address the growth in terms of the customers. On the commercial collection side, we're suggesting that you can become more efficient in terms of collecting the commercial waste. Again, these are businesses and multifamily, as well as you can enhance safety. Your current program includes basically collecting commercial refuse with rear load trucks. Best practices is front load trucks with containers, and individuals don't have to get out of the truck. Basically, they pull up to the front load containers and they use the front load collection, and they're able to collect more businesses, and it's much safer. The current approach that's being taken, you use rear load vehicles and rear load dumpsters, and it takes more staff and more time. With the city growing so quickly, it's critical that you're in position to be able to handle growth in the number of customers. So we're suggesting that you consider doing this because it's consistent with best practices, and you utilize these front load trucks. The transfer station. Transfer station provides all kinds of services. The breadth is incredible. It's shoehorned, as you can see in this picture, as you all may know, within the commercial corridor here in West Fargo. It's pretty much, I think, arguably out of space. We're suggesting that you rebrand the facility as a recycling drop-off for hard-to-recycle materials, and consider evaluating the scope of what you're currently accepting there. You also have a contract with a vendor, Waste Management Incorporated, who collects your recyclables. They drop them off at the transfer station, and then there is a contractual arrangement where the city is working with Waste Management in terms of handling those materials. That contract's up in April of 2024. Again, Matt and Logan and I have had a number of conversations about the importance, and they've initiated conversations with Waste Management. We're recommending, and some of the details are in the report, of how that contract should be better aligned with the scope of the services that are being offered. From a long-term perspective, as you heard me say, because of the growth that West Fargo is having, we suggest that you look long-term for a public-private partnership in terms of finding another site and potentially developing a transfer station that not only would provide the current services, but over the long term provide the city of West Fargo with some more flexibility. In the solid waste world, there is a lot of changes that take place often. And for the city of West Fargo to have the flexibility to be able to collect your refuse, run it through a transfer station, and have the option of sending it to another landfill if you so choose, if you get better rates or better service, we think it's really important that you plan for the future and you consider looking at potentially a public-private partnership. And again, there's more details in the report. The inert landfill, you heard me talk about what inert materials are. So this is critical in terms of your services currently because you're providing disposal services for some of the other departments. We're suggesting that from a, let's say, cost accounting perspective, that you should consider collecting revenue from the other departments through an interdepartmental transfer. That's just what we would say good practices. From a long-term perspective, similar to the transfer station, we think you need to plan for the future, which is Matt and Logan went through the process of getting a permit to provide an expansion at the inert landfill. It has approximately 10 years of additional life. That's a good time frame to begin doing your planning. So we're suggesting you consider looking for potentially another site in conjunction with some of your other work, but also considering other alternatives. And last but not least, you have drop-off sites that are well used. And I like to say, based on what the pandemic did to cardboard and the Amazon effect prior to that, and talking to Logan, your drop sites are full, and there's a lot of cardboard, and folks can't get their cardboard jammed in their recycling containers, so you definitely want to have drop sites. And as you continue to expand, we're just suggesting that you continue to have those supplement your program. So that's the first half of what I wanted to talk about. Now we have the numbers. And so I don't take too much time, since you all had an opportunity to review. I did want to give you a sense of what the methodology is. So we approach this just like any utility when you do a cost of service study. It's understanding the scope of the budget, the actuals, and as this outlines and as it states in the report, you come up with what's called a test year, which is like the baseline for the amount of revenue that you need to cover all of your services. You then allocate the cost, and those costs are allocated such as equipment and staffing to a number of different cost centers, and then ultimately it's rolled up into customer classes, which means who basically are paying the rates. You then determine the amount of revenue that's generated based on the billing units, and then ultimately the team of Burns & McDonnell and Buren Associates put together some rate options for you to consider as you go forward. We also had some discussions about reserves, and I heard the new city administrator talk about having some reserves. So through the discussions, as we've got up here, we have a target of 3 months of operations, or $1.4 million. That was considered in terms of our recommendation. So you work towards having those kinds of reserves. So I know there's a lot of numbers here. Again, this is in the report. A couple of key messages. First of all, this gives you a sense of what the services are: single-family residential, multifamily commercial, roll-off, and inert landfill. Those are the customer classes. What this provides you with is an understanding, if you don't modify your rates, everything with parentheses around it, this is the 5-year planning period that we did our forecasting. You can see, looking at all that which is highlighted in yellow, how you will continue to have a significant deficit in terms of what it costs to offer the services as compared to the revenues that you're generating. The other message is the biggest deficit in terms of services is single-family residential services. So that means the current rates that are being charged for those services don't generate adequate revenue. You can see the others, multifamily generates a slightly more revenue than is needed. Roll-off is pretty much consistent with the total revenue requirements, and the inert landfill itself is slightly less, and that's because you don't have a formal rate set up for that landfill currently. The bottom line is, if you go to the far right-hand corner, which is what I have highlighted in red, you can see without any rate changes in the next 5 years, you would have a deficit of almost $3 million. I'm not suggesting that's what you're doing, I'm just giving you a sense of what that looks like. Some folks don't like tables, some like visuals, so this is another way in which to essentially provide you with a graph of the same thing. You can see we have the different customer classes. You can see the bars represent the scope of the deficit, each of the 5 fiscal years, and you can get a sense essentially of the same message as I gave you in the previous slide. So what about the current rates as it relates to your current cash flow? So the beginning balance is about $1.6 million. That's your current balance for the sanitation department's current programs. So the concept here is, if we don't increase the rates, when do you use up that essentially that balance? And as you can see, as I've highlighted in red, by fiscal year 2026, you will have used up all of those reserves. So therefore, we need to think about what kinds of rates make sense. So in having conversations again with Matt and Logan, we talked much about the residential customer class, and we also talked about how to share this. So there's a number of ways to look at this. This particular table, again, is in the report. In short, we wanted you to have some options to consider. We're not here this evening for you to make a decision. It's to provide you with the background so you're informed. So what we're suggesting with option 1 is to increase the rates the first year by $1.75, and then each year thereafter approximately 60 cents for each of the next 4 fiscal years. That's about 3%. So the initial increase, again, would be $1.75. If you look at multifamily, commercial, and roll-off, again, those all have rates for their services. We're suggesting essentially that they be a 3% increase each year, starting in FY 2024 through the 5-year planning period. With commercial collection, you have different size containers, so you have different rates. And with the roll-off, you can see what that translates to. So a second option is an increase of $2.45 the first year, with 3% each of the subsequent years. So these are a couple of options. What's critical is this is to maintain your current service. That's why we have baseline programs up there. You need to do this to generate adequate revenues to cover your current services. So as you can see in this table, it gives you what those rates would be going forward for the FY 2024 through FY 2028. It's the same table setup. You can see the beginning balance, again, is 1.6 million. The difference with option 1 from option 2 is with option 1, we have a slightly less of an increase in FY 2024, but by FY 2026, basically you're generating enough revenue to cover the cost of all the services. So you would basically implement the option 1 rates, and then as you can see in the far right-hand corner, that's the ending balance. So back to what are the reserves that you would be generating. So it would be over $2 million, which would exceed basically the 3 months of operations, which is your target reserves. Similar as before, another way to look at this, it's the same kind of information, but you can see essentially that the purple bar, which represents the single family over the 5-year planning period, ultimately then the total revenues that are generated will equal basically the total cost. And as you can see at the end of the 5-year period, you have a positive cash flow. So what about option 2, and why do we have a second option? As you can see here, this gives you what those rates would be over the 5-year period of time. In talking with Logan and Matt, we discussed, well, what about essentially getting to where we need to be right away? What would it look like? So if you made this increase that we talked about for option 2, and you went from $1,750 to $1,995, you can see that basically in FY 2024, you would be generating enough revenue to cover essentially the cost. It's a minor deficit, $2,000. But the subsequent years essentially then would be positive. And in the right-hand corner, you can see that the total reserves then would be $2.6 million. So again, option 2 is to get you whereby you're covering all of the cost of your current programs. Again, back to baseline programs. This is not making any of the changes that we've talked about, but this is to ensure that as you go forward, you have adequate revenues so you can be in position with all of the growth. Again, this is another way to look at this particular option 2. As you can see, if you look at the purple line again, by fiscal year 2028, the single-family residential customer class is actually positive, and you can see how it impacts also the other customer classes based on the recommendation. So lastly, how do we integrate those recommended improvements with the cost? You're saying, okay, Bob, that's fine. You're telling us that we need to make these changes in terms of our rates if we want to ensure that we have a sustainable program. So we talked about 2 key changes along with several of others previously. The first was considering adding a dedicated bulky collection program. So when you're looking at the cost of these types of services, it's more than just saying what the cost is and adding it on. It doesn't work that way. Our cost of service analysis looks at how time of staff is allocated, how equipment is allocated, how maintenance is allocated, and the staff here in West Fargo, they're cross-trained. They do a lot of different things. So we work closely with Logan to get a good sense of where staff's time is currently allocated and how we could work with him to be able to address this change. So what this shows is the same table as before, with the rates at the top, starting at $19.25 in fiscal year 2024 with the 5-year forecast. It has the ending balance of $2 million, as we outlined, and it also has by fiscal year 2026 that you would basically be generating enough revenue to cover the cost. So what if you made the change whereby you discontinued collecting out-of-cart waste, you offered an extra cart, and you basically set up dedicated bulky collection by appointment? That was what our recommendation was for you all to consider. How would that impact your cost? So because the current situation is there's a lot of sharing in terms of the services, it's basically realigning the staff, buying some additional equipment, and using some of the administrative staff to be involved in actually making appointments from citizens. If you make all of that change, interestingly enough, you can see that it has a limited impact on your overall cash flow. $1.8 million as compared to $2 million. And you might say, well, how can that be? Well, as I mentioned, if you discontinue the out-of-cart setouts, then you don't have more trucks besides the automated side loaders driving down the street and picking up extra trash bags, bed frames, furniture. It's done basically through a separate service, which is targeted to pick that up. If you also offer extra carts, you could consider charging a fee or not, but at least it would all be in carts. The second recommended change that was key is listed here at the bottom, is adding front-end loader collection. FEL is the acronym for front-end loader. Again, as you heard me say, with commercial collection, currently, your program uses rear loaders. It takes more time using rear loaders. It's also much safer to use front-end commercial collection loaders, so you don't have to have staff sometimes in the back of the truck, and best practices are to do that. So, okay, how can you do that? So one of the suggestions in the report was to consider buy some commercial trucks, and Logan and Matt have put together a fleet plan, and instead of buying rear loaders in the near term, I shouldn't say, instead of buying all rear loaders in the near term, you would substitute a commercial front-end loader for that. And so therefore you have the offset. The commercial front-end loaders do cost more than the rear loaders. At the same time, they're more efficient and they hold more overall. And back to realigning staff, you'd be able to realign staff based on not having any more follow-on trucks for residential pickup. And Logan has given a lot of thought to how he would approach this. As you can see here, it would have some impact on the cash flow. Instead of $2 million, it would be down to $1.1 million. But that's at the end of the 5-year planning period. So if you would choose to begin making that transition or even do a pilot to measure the efficiencies now, then you would be, we think, in good position and ultimately as you continue to grow. So I understand from the review that we've done, as well as having an opportunity to talk to Matt and Logan about how growth works here, that sometimes it can come in bunches. So therefore, you need to be in position to do that. So in summary, the report that you have is our recommendations in terms of how to improve your program. At the same time, it's integrated with thinking about the rates and what's critical to have a sustainable program going forward. So with that, I'll stop talking and happy to answer any questions you have.
Commissioners, any questions for the gentleman? You made a comment early on about our inert landfill and the fee structure or the lack thereof. Is that on a tonnage basis? What are we doing there?
So I probably went over that too quickly, and Logan and Matt can clarify it for me if they want. But my understanding is that an external customer would contact the city and ask if they could bring materials there, and Logan and Matt would screen them and then determine what those costs and fees would be.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners.
Logan, welcome.
We do have some set rates for what we take. We either can take things by load with a set cost for that, or we do have a set tonnage that people can weigh across our scale at our transfer station before they go out to the inert landfill. Sometimes those rates have been negotiated in the past as to what it'll be depending on what type of project it is. If it's a city project where we're doing a demolition, there's chance of that disposal is not anything passed on. Sometimes it is something that's passed on depending on the project. But we have a cost set up. It does need to be updated as part of this. Our fees have not changed since 2019 on that as well. And those costs will need to be looked at and adjusted going forward.
Thank you. In your calculations, in my conversations with Logan and Matt, your calculations of your front-load garbage truck, does that also include the cost of different dumpsters when you look at those dollar numbers, the numbers?
Good question. So it does include a portion of what those would be if you implemented the pilot. So what I'm trying to suggest is there are costs in the analysis for purchasing new dumpsters and new containers.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? This is an informational presentation. We're not asked to make any decisions on rates or anything this evening. Anything else? Anything for Matt or Logan? Okay. Thank you for its thoroughness.
Yep, just to kind of clarify that too as well, what our next steps would be. What we're looking for is to kind of go out to the public with a survey to kind of set out, just to get some baseline or some more information on what the community is looking for as far as the service they want. I mean, we always hear about how good our service is and how thorough it is, and that they can throw everything away and we will pick it up. That's one thing that we'd like to continue to do, but we want to see what I guess the residents' appetite is for. Do they want that included in their base service? Would they do a pay-as-you-throw, like they want separate charges for different bulky pickup items, different things like that? So we'd like to get a little bit more public feedback on that, have that survey, and then I guess with the commission's blessing to have a kind of a public meeting as well. We're probably shooting for more towards the end of October to have that public meeting. Let that survey get out there so we get some information back before we have that meeting. So I don't know if that would be an actionable item to get that, or just a consensus from the commission for us to be able to move those next steps to have that public meeting.
Commissioners, do you want a motion or you want a consensus up here?
I'm fine with consensus.
Consensus?
Yeah.
You got to go, Matt.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions on that for me or Logan or the consultants at all?
We're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Your one-on-ones with us, I think, were very beneficial going through the sanitation study. So to you and to Logan, good job.
Yeah. It was such a comprehensive document that we'd have been here for a long time tonight if we would have went through all of it. So Bob and his team did a very good job getting all that information. So thank you.
All right. We'll now move on to item number 9. There's an update of the lagoon decommissioning. Again, we call on Mr. Matt Anvik, Director of Public Works for the City of West Fargo. Mr. Anvik. So just to clarify one thing with maybe communications for the public on the sanitation study, it is on our site and it's in the document center. Is that right? Am I looking at Rachel there or somebody? That's correct. And it's document center view 9110 West Fargo sanitation utility rate and operations study. So it is out there on the city website that you can review it in its entirety. Please continue with the lagoon update. Thank you.
Yep. I guess to backtrack on that too, and we can make Bob's presentation available on there as long as anybody from the public would want to see that as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission President, Commissioners. I will move on to a lagoon update. We've been continually working on that a little bit this year. Just to kind of go, a little background here. We began work on it in 2021. Cells 8, 9, and 10, I guess you can see on the map there on the bottom, just south of 12th Avenue, are fully decommissioned and planted. We are currently using only cells 1, 2, and 3. Cell 4 does have a little bit of water in it, but it's fairly low. And so I won't say the same with cell 7. We're kind of just using those as reserves in case we get a large rain event. We also, our crew did repair the slough on Jane 21 that was by our existing or our old salt building. They completed that this summer. Digging into that soil, once you get in the ground, we ended up chasing a lot of back the old cow manure from the facility that was there previously. We ended up chasing that back quite a ways, and there was different steps we had to take to be able to get that, but now that is completely done and passed. We had Braun Intertech out there doing the testing, and Southeast Cass was very happy with the work that was done out there. We also had the crew place about 100,000 cubic yards of clay that we received from the FM diversion as part of the agreement we had with them. As part of the agreement, we will receive 500,000 cubic yards. So right now we only have we've received about 100,000. I think in the next week or so, they're going to start hauling again, and we'll receive another 50,000 cubic yards. That was about 8 to 10 trucks each day hauling. Each truck could do about 2 loads an hour, and they were hauling for about 10 hours. So they hauled from the beginning of June until the end of July. So to haul that much, that was a large amount of dirt. And what we did with that dirt, you can kind of see it on this map a little bit. There's a little bit of easement on here from the FM or the West Fargo diversion. And if you're going to work in those areas, you need to get certain permits from the Corps. What we wanted to do with this first dirt that we had, we brought that up to the level of where we expect it to kind of be at, and build that entire level up all the way through cells 10, 9, and 8. And from now, once we get that planted, seeded, everything like that, we should no longer have to go out for any kind of permits once we start filling in those lagoons even more. Just kind of a little bit of pictures of some of what we did from what it was in 2021 to 2022 and to where they were placing the dirt, as you can see in that top picture in here just a few weeks ago. There's just another picture. Now you're facing east off of cell 10, and you can see our crews out there placing and compacting that dirt along that diversion easement, as well as some of the other dirt that the FM diversion has been bringing as well. Cell 9 is the same way. About a year ago, they were just planting it. Now you can see some of the grass and cover that has been growing, plus that there's that easement again on 9, and here's just a little bit better picture of it as well. Cell 8 is the same way. Added a little bit more in 21, 22, and now this is where they are to date in 2023. This large pile of dirt here is actually from one of our other projects going into SA 40 with a sanitary sewer that's probably about 35 feet deep. So they're moving a lot of dirt and just kind of stockpiling it from there currently. The plan going forward, we did drain cells 5 and 6, as you can kind of see off the left-hand side here. The majority of the work on those cells are complete. They have currently been working on the final grading and plan to plant those as well this fall. Just a few little project numbers here. The total approved funds for the project back in 2021 was 12.4 million. We did apply some ARPA funds, 5.8 million to this project. We did get some revenue from selling some rock off of cells 8 and 9 to the tune of $100,000, and then we have another $260,000 under contract that has been purchased and stockpiled, and we'll be getting the checks from that as they remove that rock. We'll have 5 cells completely decommissioned by the end of the year, and we have 554 acres to be decommissioned total, and currently by the end of the year, it'll be 284 acres decommissioned. It's about 51% complete. So the future timeline is to finish up 5 and 6 this year. We're going to decommission cell 4 next year, and then try and create a work area between cells 1 and 2 for hopefully anticipated for a redundant lift station in the future. Once we, if we ever hear back from the BRIC grant study, that they've been a little slow on awarding this year. 25, we're going to try and decommission cell 3. 26, we're on track for cells 2 and 7. And 2027 is cell 1, with 2028 is still our goal for finishing and completing decommissioning. This timeline is kind of depending on continuing the increases for our budget to increase the flows each year to Fargo until we get up around that 3.2 million, or about 3.5 million gallons per day. And that moves into this slide with the wastewater going. The budget amount was about 2.7 million, which equates to 2.5 million gallons of wastewater being sent over to Fargo per day. Our budget amount for 2024 is just a little over 3 million, which is, that gets us up to that 2.75 million gallons a day. Our average, over the last 5 years is about 3.2 million a day. Some of the lower years, as you can see in this this slide here, the table, that if we do have a year like, say, 2021, where it was really low, that 2.75 million gallons a day will actually take everything to Fargo for the next year. But if we have a wet year, we end up sending about 177 million gallons out to the lagoons over the course of the year. So on the bottom there, it says we need about 3 cells to handle that much for the year. Once we start getting over that 3 million gallons a day is when we can really start working on all the rest of them and just keeping 1 or 2 around for storage and just in case of large rain events until we do have the ability to send everything to Fargo. One thing I wanted to touch on a little bit that I haven't brought back much is our bug program. I brought this up in 2021, and we've been implementing every year, and it's just to reduce the sludge that we have out in the lagoons. The bugs are basically just little bacteria, but it's a lot more fun to call them bugs anyways. And it's, as you can see, we've dropped it in just cell 3 from 2.27 or 27 inches in 2019 to 1.4 feet or 17 inches in 2023. Once we get down under that foot of sludge and we drain those cells and dry it out is when we don't have to haul that out anymore. So by implementing this program, there is probably 24 inches or more of sludge that we won't have to haul out, which is just a cost saving because of hauling that. What our vendors said is about 7 cents a gallon. So if to remove the sludge that we have in there right now at 7 cents a gallon is $975,000. When we started this a few years back, I think it was estimated it was about 1.2 million. So we've saved that much just by doing this bug program if we would have to haul that out. And this just gives you a little, they kind of did a 3D map in 21, 22. One to really see is it shows the depth. So in the middle here, is about 1.5, and the one corner is almost 3 to 5 or 3.5 feet of sludge. In 21, you can see that it's getting a little bit narrower in 22. And then you really start to see it now in 23, where you're down underneath the foot down in the center, and it's really growing to that 1 to 1.5 throughout most of the bottom of the cell. I just had cell 3 on this one, because this one, cell 3 actually had the most sludge in it. They were just finishing up cell 1, I didn't have the numbers for that, but that will be actually lower than what cell 3 is. But that's just kind of an update. We are still on track for being under budget and being on time for 2028, you know, weather permitting, and with those increases in the budget, as long as we can handle those over the next few years.
Could you go back to slide, or page number 10, please?
10. Okay. Yep.
For the public's knowledge, would you explain what ARPA funds were?
Well,
the
I'd
public
probably
understands
kind
that.
of butcher that, but it was basically the kind of COVID funds. It was American
Rescue plan.
Yeah, it was kind of the rescue funds that we used. And with those funds, I think the finance director at the time used those because they were so, they had to be attached. There's so many different regulations to what they could be used for. He felt that at the time it was the best to use it towards this project, which freed up some more capital improvement sales tax money to use for a wider array of projects than the limited number of projects that these funds would.
Just exactly the explanation I was looking for is that this was the federal funding that we got during COVID, and we applied it because of the criteria that the federal government had of how we could have used the money, and that's why we applied it to this. So there's $5,800,000 of federal money, COVID money, that came into the city that was applied to this from a financial point.
Yep. And just kind of off of our latest kind of updated budget numbers that we were looking at with Eric Watney, I think he had figured out it'll be end of 2026, early 2027 before we actually run out of that ARPA funds, before we actually would then get into any kind of CIP funds that would be used for this. We'll could stretch these funds to almost to the end of the project.
And for the record, we have an agreement with the FM diversion for 500,000 cubic yards of clay to be delivered to our lagoons at the discretion of Mr. Anbick and his team.
Yep. They have had conversations and they have asked us if we wanted more dirt. I say, if you want to get rid of it, we have spots for it, but they, for some reason, want us to pay for it. And I say, I'm not quite there yet. So if you want to dump it off for free, we'll take it, but we're not paying for it just yet.
Any questions for Mr. Anbick with regarding decommissioning of lagoons? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
The next order of business is 9A. I'm sorry.
It's a real short break.
Okay. We're going to stand adjourned for 10 minutes. Anybody else, or Dustin left there? Is he in back?
Well, if my health can get me, yeah, we're going for 3.5 months. We rented a condo again in San Francisco. I don't know if my health is gonna allow it, you know, I've gotta have some surgeries and stuff. So I don't know that,
We just wanted you. We'll reconvene the regular part of the agenda. Again, we're going to now handle 9A, which is District Number 2276, the roundabout at 9th Street West and 52nd Avenue West. The intent was to authorize a resolution of necessity as presented by Mr. Dan Hansen, West Fargo City Engineer. At the request of Commissioner George, we have moved this to the regular agenda. So with that, Mr. Hansen, we'll let you go first, and then we'll call on Commissioner George for any comments she has.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. Originally at the last commission meeting, we had brought forth these two roundabout projects. What was in the packet tonight was the resolution of necessity, which starts the public protest process. It would set up the hearing for people to be able to, we would need to publish the meeting, send letters out, and have public input at a protest meeting that was scheduled. With that, I do welcome the discussion, and I turn it back to you, Ms. George.
Thank you, Commissioner George.
All right, so my thought with this one is, since we voted on this, I've gotten a few emails, I know other commissioners have gotten a few emails, and it's still the concern about safety. I know there's a lot of parents that seem to be concerned about that. They're not sure if this is gonna solve the safety issue or have more safety issues. So maybe having some sort of public meeting or discussion, like with the people in that neighborhood, to come up with solutions or ideas is kind of one of my thoughts going forward. I think there's others as well that maybe have some thoughts.
I believe that the statement of necessity is the groundwork that starts that, Commissioner, but Mr. Hansen.
Yes, we did have a meeting with the consultant who brought in a roundabout expert that would be the person in responsible charge for actually the geometric design of the roundabout. That's a gentleman that actually owned a company for 10 years that only did roundabouts. He's an expert at this. One of the things that I had proposed to that group, and I was going to bring up tonight, if it would have remained on the consent agenda when the mayor would go around and ask if any department has anything to add. What I was going to ask is that I would like to have a neighborhood meeting for the 9th and 52nd roundabout project on Tuesday, November 14th at 6 o'clock. We would post that as a public meeting so any commissioners would be able to attend. And I've requested that that expert that came in and helped present the project and the design parameters to us be actually there to present this project, to go over a lot of the things, because I've seen several of the emails that have been forwarded to me as well. So, that would be separate from this resolution of necessity public hearing. This would be just an informational meeting where we can go ask the public to attend specific to that neighborhood. I've directed my staff to, and with help of administration, to actually see if the school will allow us a spot there, so that way we're almost on site. We've actually, we're also going to request that their safety resource officer, who is also asking for the project, be present. I would open, my intent would be that I would open that meeting, basically describe the project, and then we would have an informational portion of that by that gentleman I was just speaking of, who could go through the safety features of a roundabout. There is a lot of people that don't believe that a roundabout is safer than a signal, for example. And there's a lot of data that he can present that shows the safety of roundabouts. And it's not necessarily to persuade anyone as much as to communicate and explain to people the benefits of that. And they would obviously be able to make their own opinions moving forward from that meeting. But we do have intent, if it's okay with the commission, to have that neighborhood meeting.
Commissioner Simmons has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I know you've had conversations with the school and they're supporting this as well. Is that correct?
The school had reached out to my transportation
Okay.
engineer, Andrew, and he's been working with their safety resource officer. They were saying that what exists out there, they're not comfortable with, that something needs to be done.
So my point is, maybe we could get somebody from the school to be there as well.
Yep,
So if there's questions for,
the goal would be definitely to have the safety resource officer from the school, and anyone from the school that we can get to attend, to be at that meeting.
With communication on this meeting, like, what's the plan to get that communication out? Because I mean, I know the Wilds, they have a Facebook group, and I know there's some other things, but I feel like it needs to be beyond just the city website.
Yes, we have to, when we publish, obviously we have to publish the resolution of necessity, and for that protest hearing, I was going to work with our communication staff to actually put together a flyer that's more brightly done and looks like it's done by a communication staff, to slide in with those letters. And in the letter that alerts people to the protest hearing, we would also say, please see the attached flyer for the intent to have a neighborhood meeting that you can come learn about the project. No decisions will be made at that meeting, but it'll be an opportunity. And the way that I picture it would be, we would have some board and easels showing different layouts, some roundabout information, and we would open it up, have a presentation, and then leave an hour of walk around and personal one-on-one if anybody wants to come up, point at the board and easel, have a discussion with myself, the consultant staff, our transportation engineer, the expert that I mentioned, as well as hopefully the safety resource officer and school staff as well.
Commissioner Anderson.
All right, I got one, maybe two questions. So you mentioned a signal, and where the preference was to do a roundabout. Why wouldn't we do a signal and forego all this extra work?
We've had several studies done on the corridors, both 23rd, 2 studies done on 23rd, and then 1 study that was completed on the 52nd Avenue. In all of those studies that were done, it was recommended that a roundabout be constructed for the ultimate design of the intersection. The other thing is, and I believe I mentioned last time, is that we don't have any fiber network in the area. So our closest fiber is at the corner of Cheyenne and 40th, so we would have about 1.5 miles of fiber that we would need to run to that intersection. Now I would add that, say we had to do that for this project, there's also benefit of having fiber run there. Say we have a future police or fire station, I mean, we'll have those utilities in the neighborhood. So there are some additional benefits to running the fiber to that location. But the other thing that is one of the more major reasons why is the intersection does not warrant a signal. It is listed, both 23rd and 52nd are listed from the DOT on their functional classification roadway maps, which their position is that they have jurisdiction over any improvements that we would make on that roadway. And in the email that they had sent to me, it said regardless of funding, because the intent would be that we would not be using their funds to construct any improvements right now that we're doing. However, we do submit for grant funding on future improvements. The improvement of 52nd that we would be submitting in the future would be between 9th and Cheyenne to expand that into a 4-lane. We anticipate that it will remain a 2-lane west of 9th for the foreseeable future. So that would be a fairly expensive project that we could use the grant funding on. If we install an unwarranted signal, it would affect our ability to get that grant, and we would have to remove it if we did achieve that grant. So it does affect future funding, but not only that, we've got a very good relationship with the DOT, the City of West Fargo does, and we've worked well with them. I anticipate there's no direction that we would go that the DOT would approve us putting in an unwarranted signal. So we would be basically telling the DOT, we're going to do it anyways, which we would want to check with legal, but I believe we have that right to do that. I know that there's been other, unwarranted signals installed in the Fargo Moorhead area. However, it would be at the sacrifice of a bit of a relationship tarnishing with the local DOT, which we have a lot of different projects that we want to work with them in the future. For example, the 26th Street interchange, potentially an overpass for 13th over the interstate. And just not only that, but we're applying this month for that funding that I'm talking about, not on the 52nd corridor, but other corridors. So it would be the installation of an unwarranted signal.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner George.
I mean, I know we already voted on this roundabout, so I'm not sure how this would work, but at this public meeting, I mean, if people have to pay a special assessment for this roundabout, then I'm assuming they'd have to pay a special assessment for a stoplight, then maybe shouldn't it be presented at the meeting, an option as to what the people would prefer if they have to pay for it either way? Just a thought.
Permission to speak freely. My thoughts on that, if we present a cheaper and a more expensive option and we take a vote, we would generally get the cheaper option preferred, but that
I don't mean cheaper, more expensive. I mean, like, what does the neighborhood prefer?
Oh, as far as the stoplight versus the
roundabout. Yeah.
Commissioner Simmons.
I don't disagree with you, Commissioner George. I think the problem we have is they're not warranted. So what that means, if we have lights there and some little kid gets killed, we're responsible. Totally responsible, 100%. And any attorney, they're not going to go after the guy that's driving the vehicle, I guarantee you that. They're going to come after us. So that's the one thing when it's warranted or not warranted. Is that correct?
Yeah, is that correct?
Well, if we decided to put in an unwarranted signal, that would be because the DOT does not agree with us that the traffic or the different number of things that you go to do to get the warrants justifies the signal. Now,
Right, and there's lies the problem. That's where I'm going with this from years ago, you know? I hate to say it, but I have been there a long time. I've seen a lot of these, and that's the problem. When you put an unwarranted one, you have a lot of liability on us.
I would ask the...
Is that John?
Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, Commissioner Simmons. Having been through these types of claims before, typically in an accident, they'll sue the driver, they'll sue the city. They would look to the city to see if whatever the traffic infrastructure, was it recommended by a consultant? Is it supported by the reports? If it's not recommended, if it's not supported, it certainly would contribute to a potential liability finding.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
Okay, then these should all be things brought up at that.
So, again, being that we move these from consent to the regular agenda, the business at hand is that we still have to have the statement of necessity. And then, of course, Mr. Hanson has communicated that he will certainly have public forums and/or notifications for people. So, are you only asking that for the 52nd Avenue one, Commissioner George, or about 2280 as well?
That one's a separate issue for me. Like, besides from what we're talking about, that one's a separate.
So we're going to deal with 2276 first. Again, the business at hand is to authorize the resolution of a necessity. And Mr. Hanson has outlined that along with that, he will do public notifications and public meetings. So,
I'll make the motion that we approve the...
is there a second, please?
Let me read this. I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you, to where we're at. It's over here, right? Oh, it was on the consent, that's right.
That's right.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Commissioner Olson, a second by Commissioner Simmons to authorize the resolution of necessity with the dialogue that has taken place with regard to public notification and public meetings. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That the motion passes on a 3-2 vote. Next order of business is District Number 2280, a roundabout at 23rd Avenue East and 6th Street East. Again, being that this has been brought off the consent agenda to the regular agenda, this is an actionable item. So again, Mr. Hanson is here to looking for an authorization of a resolution of necessity on this project as well. Commissioner George.
All right, so since I was the one that pulled this again, okay, so again, I kind of brought this up last time, that my issue with this one is I'm concerned about the senior housing and how this could affect them, being that they are in that special assessment district. That's my only issue with this one, I guess, at this point.
Is your issue, Commissioner George, that property would be assessed a dollar amount that might have an adverse effect on the rent or whatever the seniors are doing? Is that what we're?
That's exactly right, thank you.
Very
Yeah.
good. Mr. Hanson, excuse me.
That's right. Dustin and I almost became
Struggling.
commissioners. But thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and commissioners. The question with regards to special assessments, that property is located within the district that we had created at the last commission meeting. As far as the assessments go, the anticipation is that it would be assessed on a square footage basis to the properties within that district. Now, with it would be the commission's decision whether that becomes a specially assessed project or not. Right now, the way it's been presented is because the policy that we currently have for regional reconstructs is that we would do an 80% assessment with a 20% city cost participation. That is the way it was presented. However, there are capital improvement sales tax funds that could be allocated towards the project. We've done analysis for both of these roundabouts that we're presenting in 2276 and 2280. And eventually, if we were to move forward, it would be hard to say, let's not assess this one and let's still assess the others, or take the assessments we would put on that one and put it towards the others. It's more of a treat everybody in the district equally. So I would say that's my opinion. But in the end, if we didn't want to assess it, we would just be able to.
Well, I think another difference is, though, that's housing, where the rest of them are commercial, that are in that district.
So would it be appropriate that you reach out to Mr. Dan Madler from Fargo Cass Public Housing and tell him, what this action is and your 80-20 split, and whether that has an effect on their funding or their model, their finance model? Commissioner.
Thank you. I know when we sat down with them, I'm going to, which isn't good to do, but kind of assume they knew part of this was coming. But maybe Casey has a better. Do you have any understanding of this? That they knew, when we met with them, that
Mr. Simmons
they
has
built
asked.
that into their.
Mr. Simmons has asked that our economic development director, Casey Sanders Berglund, is here.
Sure.
Please.
All I can say for certain at this point is I have reached out to Dan Madler. Dan and I have had a conversation about this project. So I directly reached out to Dan and his team with some timelines, some information. I haven't heard anything back, but I did reach out again earlier today. So hopefully I'll have some feedback directly from them so that they could be aware of the entire project. But I don't have any.
Please share that with the commission when you get it. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. Again, we're not approving, the project to be done. We're just approving to go out and look and kind of research it, correct? And
Just the resolution. of
just the
necessity,
resolution.
So they can move forward.
Yeah,
we
what
could
this
still
trade-
stop them at any time.
Yeah, because I was going to say, but didn't we get voted on 2 weeks ago to approve it, the project?
We just approved the formation of the.
We approve the authorizing staff time to move
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
We
created
haven't
a
actually
district and-
blessed the whole thing yet.
Right, okay, yeah, because that's, like I said, it'd be nice if we had communication with them, or could they just be taken out of the district since they're different than the other people in that area?
Would hear any protests at the protest hearing. And then also.
But couldn't you draw that different? I mean, are you required by law to draw them in that?
That would be the Special Assessment Commission, which.
Yeah, we can, the district was created because my staff and myself got together and we said what makes sense. If we wanted to move that line, the line that I presented was created because I drew the line based off of comments with staff, so.
And the philosophy is benefit, as to
Correct.
what the area that will benefit. Mr. Shockley, did you have a point you'd wanted to make?
Yeah, maybe just to kind of level set for everybody, the resolution of necessity creating improvement districts is a step-by-step process. Until you have the resolution of necessity completed, you can't award a contract anyways. And so this is a step in the process where you have the public hearing. If there's sufficient protest, it stops the district. The assessment process is a separate process that moves forward. I would advise against deliberately taking a property out of an improvement district if the engineer says in their reasonable judgment it looks like it benefits. It could be that the benefit is lower than other properties, but it should stay within the district.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Anything else, commissioners? Any questions? Commissioner George?
My opinion is it benefits the shoppers in the commercial districts, and for the housing, they probably would prefer to not have that traffic anyway. That's my opinion. So I don't know if it benefits the housing, so to speak. I see it as a commercial thing.
All right. Any other discussion? Again, this is an actionable item. To a motion to authorize the resolution of necessity for 2280, the roundabout at 23rd Avenue East and 6th Street East.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to authorize a resolution of necessity for number 2280, roundabout at 23rd Avenue East and 6th Street East. And again, with the conversation and dialogue that we've had, to reach out to Mr. Dan Madler, Fargo Cast Public Housing. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I want the public to know, or you, Dan, to know, even though I supported moving this forward, I do want to work with that housing, because those senior citizens are not going to be able to afford it. I'm not saying pull it out at all. What I'm saying is that the developer should be able to work that into his business model.
Yep.
That's where I'm going with this.
That's what we're asking. You bet.
Okay.
I will actually agree with you. I think, there is some issues with that intersection, but the housing is my concern that needs to be worked with.
I agree.
So.
I agree.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10 is the Meadow Ridge Development Mill and Overlay. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer, City of West Fargo. The purpose of this discussion is to create an improvement district number 2281 and direct the engineer to prepare an engineer's report. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This is a new project in front of you. And the Meadow Ridge development was developed in the 70s and early 80s. It is also one of the neighborhoods that we receive the most calls about with regards to people wanting their roads fixed. And there was, just currently, if you recall, more engineering has been hired by the city a while back to take a look at the core area study and re-look at it and renew it and come back with a list of projects that we're going to be doing in the core area. Now, when we met with them, they've got different algorithms that they use to create their priorities, and we wanted to put the main focus on the utilities, what utilities are going to fail. And so I don't anticipate this, probably in a couple months when we get that report back from Moore, that it will list the Meadow Ridge roadways as one of the projects that we should have in our triage of the first 8 projects, because they're going to be, again, focused more on the underground utilities. The Meadow Ridge neighborhood was, because of the age that it was constructed, does have PVC for a lot of the utilities that it has. So it's not going to make that top 8 list. Well, let's just assume the top 8 projects lasts us 6 years, for example. If we weren't to do anything other than what was on that list, we would be down the road another 7 years before we'd be addressing some of these roadway issues. We already are doing the South Side Mill and Overlay project. We did have mill and overlay projects in various neighborhoods on our 2022 CIP. With that South Side Mill and Overlay project, we've already exceeded what was the number that was on that 2022 CIP. But I felt with the amount of of correspondence that we have from that neighborhood. I've been reached out to by several commissioners and Commissioner President Dardis, from people that have reached out to them regarding the roadways, that I thought it would be good for me to bring it to your attention and potentially move forward with add this mill and overlay project, not to those other projects. It would be its own separate project, but be able to take care of that in 2024 as well. Just as the other projects that we have, mill and overlay projects that we presented that with the 80-20 split for 80% assessed, 20% city cost, with the ADA ramps being 100% covered by the city, which was something that was reflective of our discussion with our ADA transition plan here a couple months ago. So basically, knowing that we aren't going to be given a priority of the roadways in that neighborhood with the upcoming list for the core area revamp, I'm bringing it forth to your attention to find out what's your appetite for moving forward with this mill and overlay project. By doing this, we would create a district, and we would direct the engineer to prepare a report that I would come back with estimated costs and estimated assessments. In the packet is, and I have up on the screen here, is the Meadow Ridge neighborhood. It does show the highlighted streets that we would be looking to mill and overlay, as well as everybody within that dashed line would be the district that would be part of the assessments. I'm anticipating it would be on a front footage basis, but we would also have to take a look because there are some multifamily properties on there, and that would be included as for a recommendation in the report upcoming as to the method of special assessing these properties for that. And with that, I would open it up to any questions.
Commissioner George.
Yeah, I'm one that's brought this forward because I've gotten multiple requests to have something done with this neighborhood. So I have a strong appetite for it, but I've also had requests for like a neighborhood meeting. So with this project and the costs associated and everything, is that something you would be willing to do? Is a neighborhood meeting to talk about options and costs and that type of thing in this neighborhood, or is there an appetite from the commission for that, I guess? But that's what I've heard from people from this neighborhood is
Yes,
they want it done and they would like a meeting.
Yeah. So the first step would be to have the engineer prepare the report, which we would need a feasibility study from the consultant. That way we've got the dollars that we can go to the residents with. We would be coming back with a resolution of necessity for this project, which would create a public hearing as well. If the commission would like us to do additional public outreach meetings, such as we were talking with the roundabouts, I would be more than happy to facilitate or, any kind of meeting like that as well.
Okay, awesome, cool. That's where I'm at.
Commissioner Anderson.
All right, so the question I have is for Mr. Hanson or even the commission here. In any talks with the residents in this area, has specials been brought up? Would they be aware that they might be special assessed? Are they okay with that?
I have brought that up and it, and with people that have reached out to me, and it kind of seems like they're so desperate to have their roads fixed that they're open to it.
Okay.
I've had 4 contact me, and one gentleman that I met with, when he was bringing his boat back, even with his motor elevated, he took the lower unit out on one of the dips. So I had to stand in his driveway and have that discussion with him. There is definitely a need for some work there. I've driven every street that's in there, and there's a need. Those streets have not held up. So, any other questions of Mr. Hanson? Again, we're looking to create a improvement district number 2281 and to direct the engineer to prepare an engineer's report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to do a project of the Meadow Ridge Development Mill and Overlay, create an improvement district 2281 and direct the engineer to prepare an engineer's report with the caveat that Commissioner George has requested for some citizen input as well. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanson. Item number 11 is the city administrator's report. We call on Dustin Scott, city administrator.
Well, thank you, Commission President Dardis and members of the commission. So the first item I'd like to get into here is the update on our 2022 audit. And so I'll certainly be relying on Finance Director Heidi to help me out with any questions, but just a brief update. Heidi and her team have been working very diligently with Eide Bailey, our auditor, to get everything in order, get some good progress made. However, there's still a number of items to be done. Some examples are the review of our capital projects and fixed assets, as well as there have been some additional audit requests from the state auditor's office as a result of
Such
some inquiries.
Could you, any detail you can give us that what the state auditor has requested?
The state auditor's office received some inquiries from the public, and I don't have the exact list, but I believe there were, I don't know, a half a dozen items or so, Heidi, some things that I can recall were utility billing, TIF districts, and a couple of those other items.
Okay.
And so the state auditor office did reach out to our auditor to ask that they look into those items as well. So that's again what we're going to start looking into and working on, but it will take a little longer before we can complete our audit. So again,
Are we going to have to ask for an extension?
yes, I believe so. I'll let Heidi come up and give some of those particulars, but right now our schedule is to complete the audit by the end of the year.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner President and Commissioners. So we don't have a technical deadline for the audit. I mean, we like to get it done by year end, but as far as anything statutorial, there is not a deadline for the audit, so we're fine getting it done by year end.
Very good, thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, I believe in a meeting a few months ago, I had mentioned that our goal would be to complete the audit by September 30th. So I appreciate her clarifying that there's no statutory requirement, but it is going to go beyond the original goal that I had stated prior. So any other questions on where we're at with the audit?
Commissioners? Oh, looks like we're good.
Okay, the next item I put in here is an update on our police chief position. Really shortly after Chief Oternist announced his retirement, began reaching out to each of you and scheduled some meetings to talk through what the process might look like moving forward in filling the chief of police position. So, and at the time, I shared with you that I have the utmost respect for Assistant Chief Nielsen, and fully confident that he'd make a great chief of police. He's been with us for 24 years and has been absolutely vital in helping not only grow but transform our department into what I feel is certainly one of the finest in the country. That said, we also talked about taking the opportunity to utilize the expertise and abilities of our new HR manager, Sarah Gosevich, and reach out to the department and let her do the HR thing and complete and conduct some surveys and some one-on-one interviews. She can certainly provide a little more information on that, but what you have in front of you, I was able to deliver this afternoon, her report of findings based on her one-on-one interviews. And along with those interviews, she also did call it a climate survey where I believe it was 21 members of the department filled out anonymously a survey. Now, the questions within that survey are not just, it's not one question where they just asked, do you agree with Dustin Scott and we should promote our assistant chief to the chief of police position? They were a variety of questions engaging the current climate, leadership in general. And so, again, Ms. Goshevich compiled all that information very well. She wrote a great summary report, and I believe it is definitely in line with the sentiment that I shared with you when we first met, that I fully support Assistant Chief Nielsen as our next Chief of Police. So with that, I would pause for any questions regarding the work that Sarah has done, or anything else you'd want to ask.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. As police commissioner, I've worked with Pete for the last almost 20 years. I've never seen a person as calm and sits like he is now and doesn't judge people until he does, until something's wrong. I think he would make a great chief of police, so I'd like to take this and make it an actionable item and make a motion to appoint Pete Nielsen as our new West Fargo City Chief of Police.
Second it.
I have a motion and a second to appoint Deputy Chief Pete Nielsen as the police chief for the city of West Fargo. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
Is there an effective date?
I'm sorry?
Is there an effective date?
Effective as of, I would assume, as soon as,
Well, October 6th is Chief Otterness's last day, so
October 7th?
a couple house cleaning items that maybe I might rely on John to help with, but for one, I would hope it'd be effective as soon as Otterness is done, so call it 11:59 on October 6th. However, there will be, at a future meeting, we'll have to schedule a ceremony by which Assistant Chief Nielsen would be sworn in as the Chief of Police. And so with that house cleaning item, I'd defer to John.
Mr. Shockley?
Until the official swearing in, he would be the acting police chief, which I don't think is really any significant issue. Just once he gets sworn in, then it's official, so.
So the effective date would be 11:59, October 6th, which is that Friday?
That's Friday, yes.
Friday is Chief Otterness's last day. Is that what you meant, Commissioner? Second it? Do you have approval for the amendment? Okay. Commissioner Anderson, there's your answer.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, would you please note on the vote that it was unanimous? Thank you. Anything else for us, Mr. Scott?
I will end on that great note. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Pete.
Is there anything, any correspondence, Mr. Scott?
Apologies. No, I do not.
Any non-agenda items any of the commissioners would like to bring forward this evening? Is there any non-agenda items that any of our department heads would like to bring forward this evening? Commissioner Simmons?
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson?
Second.
We stand adjourned.
I almost forgot that.